with Hurts, if you go back to October, he had not shown much progress at all from his rookie year. And it gets a little tiring to hear the coaches talk about, well, he hasn't made 16 starts, so it's like he's still in his rookie year. No, that's garbage. When you play, when you're in the NFL for a year, you experience a lot of things, whether you're on the field or not. He's in his second season. He has to be judged as a second season quarterback, and he didn't show progress from last December to this October. It was minimal progress, and that made it really frustrating because you're like, this guy, something's not clicking. And then all of a sudden in the Lions game, he started doing some different things. And since then, we've seen real progress every week, where there was a point in October where he led the NFL in throws out of bounds. So we all knew, get pressure on him. He's going to scramble to his right. If he doesn't find somebody, he's going to throw the ball 5 rows deep. That's just not something you can sustain over the long term. You want to be able to throw the ball away, but when you're leading the league in throwaways and you're not a volume passer throwing 40 passes a game, that's not a good sign.
Mac guys here with you on Birds 365. We got a guest joining us, a new guest. We've never had him here on the show before. Looking forward to talking to him today. He's a guy who's been covering and writing about the Philadelphia Eagles for a long time. Tommy Lawlor of EaglesBlitz.com jumps aboard with us here on Birds 365. Tommy, thank you very much for hopping aboard. How long have you been writing about the Eagles?
Well, off and on since 2003. So it has been a while. It used to just be on message boards, but I've still put in the effort and the time writing about them. And now for like the last 10 years or so, it's been a different format. So long time. Seen a lot of good and a little bit of bad as well.
And that, larger sample size, the better, Tommy. So I guess I want to start. I saw your piece on Jonathan Gannon, the defense, and I think that's quieted down a little bit over the past month because of everything going on with the offense and Jalen Hurts banging up his ankle, Gardner Minshew coming in. People have kind of forgotten about that defense. And if you go back to Las Vegas, man, they were up in arms about Jonathan Gannon, his scheme, his what he wants to get accomplished. More than anything else, I think the debate of aggressiveness, and obviously Philadelphia loves that with Jim Johnson and going back to Buddy Ryan versus a more passive approach which Jonathan was playing. How do you think things have gone to this point? It's the 11th ranked defense in the NFL. Well, it was coming into the bye week. I haven't checked the stats after this week, but that's pretty good. I mean, contextually, where are you on this defense, Tommy?
Well, I think overall they've had a pretty good year. And what they've done is they've had the ability to shut down mediocre and bad offenses. The only quote-unquote good quarterback they've shut down would be Matt Ryan in the opener. After that, you talk about, Zach Wilson with the Jets, Jared Goff with the Lions, Teddy Bridgewater with the Broncos, and then obviously Sam Darnold with the Panthers. When they faced good quarterbacks, they've struggled. Even in this little hot stretch, when they faced the Chargers, they had no answer for the Chargers in that offense. The Chargers didn't punt once. They still did come up with a couple of fourth down stops and at least slowed down the Chargers enough that the Chargers scored 27. And while 27 is not great, as we've seen in today's NFL, you're not going to be shutting people down to 15 points on a regular basis. When you face a good quarterback, they're going to beat you some of the time. And the defense has had some good moments. Gannon's got some good ideas. He just doesn't have the right people for this unit to play at a high level consistently right now. But they're playing better than people give them credit for. They're 9th in the league in yards allowed right now. Right. And I don't think people realize that. And so there's something to work with there. But, the other day, Football Outsiders had them down in the bottom 10 defenses. So when you put context on the stats, they're not ideal.
Right. But let's put it into a context just overall on your evaluation of the improvement you've seen, John, throughout some of those guys who were completing 80% passes in a game, 3 in a row.
Crazy.
not good. Yeah,
90
like
for Derek Carr.
Yeah,
90%.
Carr was 31 for 34.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're having 7-on-7 in training camp, the coach is going to be thrilled with 31 for 34.
Yeah.
That should never happen in a game unless you're facing, Peyton Manning at his zenith and you got a banged up unit. Well, Gannon had his starters. He had his corners. He had his defensive line. And they just played so soft and so passively. And he played passively up front and in the back. And that's the problem. You've either, he when you listen to his press conferences, he talks about the marriage of rush and coverage. And he's absolutely right. But if the rush isn't getting home and the coverage is playing off, something's got to give. And in that game, nothing gave. Well, except for the Raiders kicker getting tired of kicking extra points.
Agreed and understood. But it has improved. It was god-awful, one of the worst in the league, as a matter of fact. Probably the worst in the league with quarterback completion percentage against them. But it has significantly gotten better. Understood the level of quarterback quality that they faced against came down a little bit. But they've also just played better and gotten better results.
Well, that's what you want. You want a coach who can adapt, right? And Gannon has shown that, because after the Raiders game, he started blitzing more. And then after the Chargers game, he started playing more press coverage. And so while I'm a little frustrated with the fact it's taken him this long to make those adaptations, I'm happy that he actually has been able to change. And if he just stuck to his guns and said, this is my system, we're not changing anything, that's a coach you got to fire. This is a coach who showed, okay, I'm going to try to do things my way. If it's not working, we will move on. We will tweak things until it does start working. So when he has made changes, they have worked. It's just been that you've been a little slow to make some of those changes.
But let me play devil's advocate, Tommy, though. Are those changes because of the decline in the quarterbacks he's been facing, as opposed to the early docket of Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, etc.? You brought up Justin Herbert. If they make playoffs, if they make the run, if they see another good quarterback, are we going back to what we saw early in the season?
What he wanted to do. The results, you can say, maybe had something to do with the fact he's facing those quarterbacks. I think he's going to play more aggressively no matter what, because he's seen if he doesn't, he has no chance. They didn't force Kansas City to punt once. They didn't force the Chargers to punt once. They struggled against Dallas. Dallas ended up punting because Dallas called off the dogs. But, what he did was not working against top quarterbacks. So he had to do something. It would take a blind man not to see that the players have responded to the more aggressive approach. They play with more energy and more enthusiasm. When you watch that defense, they're fired up now. When you go back to early in the season, there wasn't as much juice on the field. When you're watching those guys, they were a little bit more by the numbers. And now you see some real energy and emotion, and that's a real part of playing defense. Offense is about execution and timing and precision. Defense, emotion plays a difference. It's a factor. And if you play out there and you're fired up and you have some emotion with you, you're going to be a better defensive player. On offense, emotion is somewhat irrelevant. It's about how good you are.
Tommy Lawlor from EaglesBlitz.com, our guest here on Birds 365. Let's talk about that marriage between rush and coverage. Up front, the Eagles' numbers in sacks are pretty pitiful. They're one of the worst in the National Football League, but they have gotten some pressures. And John and I debate all the time about the pressures, and he always trots out Chris Long for me to tell me, Jody, pressures are important. Don't dismiss pressures. Look what happened in the NFC Championship game. I know. But the Eagles have upped the pressure a little bit. Some of it defensive tackle. We know the Hargrave got off to the great start, but he's kind of leveled off. Fletcher's played better the last couple of weeks. But I still need to see more from the Eagles defensive end. If this team's going to be able to win enough games to make the playoffs and then be competitive in that game when they get there, their defensive ends have to give them something when it comes to pressure. You got faith in any of the Eagles defensive ends?
Well, I agree with you. The defensive line has been disappointing. I don't think there is anybody who would really disagree with that. And, when you look at Josh Sweat, he does some amazing things. There's plays there he will fly off the edge. He'll shove the tackle right back into the quarterback's lap. But the consistency, you need somebody who can do that when it's third down, the game's on the line, and they know that right tackle or left tackle knows it's a key play, and they're in their best moment. The quarterback knows it's a key play. He's in his best moment, and everybody's real focused. Josh tends to get his sacks in odd places. He got one the other day in the middle of the second quarter, and the way he got the sack was because Anthony Hargrave pushed the guard back to the quarterback's lap, and Will said nowhere to go, and so Sweat was there to finish him off. But Sweat, when we watched him this summer, when we've seen flashes of him during the season, you see incredible talent, but the production doesn't match the talent yet. We're still waiting for that light to go on and for him to become a play-in, play-out difference maker, and that just hasn't happened. Derek Barnett frustrates us all because he has moments when he's really good, and then he has his penalties and his issues, and he gets you frustrated. The defensive tackles have been good most of the year. Fletcher was a little quiet there for a little bit. The light has come on for him. He's playing better. Hargrave, the sack numbers have leveled off, obviously, but he's getting a lot of attention from teams. He's still being disruptive. Like I said, that sack from Sweat the other day, Hargrave drove the left guard right back into Wilson. So that really, Sweat got the sack, but it was Hargrave who made the play. And so the defensive line is overall, if you say good or bad, it's good. But it hasn't been what we expected. Losing Brandon Graham certainly hurt him, but not this much. These guys have just not been able to play at a super high level like we thought they might.
And anybody watching last night, the Rams versus the Cardinals, saw what Tommy was talking about consistency-wise from play one throughout the game. Aaron Donald, but he's sort of a different animal. But I digress. Tommy, I want to talk about TJ Edwards because you could point a direct causal connection to him taking over as sort of the quarterback of that defense and the improvement. Eagles tried to trade him in the offseason. More of a traditional linebacker, which obviously is not in vogue in the modern NFL. Everybody wants coverage guys. And all of a sudden, it's December, and teams are running the football. And maybe it's by luck, and I think it's more by luck by design, but the Eagles may have finally found a linebacker. What have you seen from TJ Edwards?
Well, they say sometimes the best trades are the ones you don't make, and obviously that would be the case in keeping Edwards. What you have with Edwards is he is kind of an old school linebacker with the ability to stack and shed, where he runs up, he's able to engage a blocker, shed the blocker, go and get the running back. And if you're playing between the tackles, this is the guy you want on the field. Where he struggles a little bit, he doesn't have top speed to make those plays out on the perimeter. And in a modern game with all the quick screens and the edge type plays, you have to be able to move sideline to sideline. That's where he's a little bit limited. Where we've seen real progress this year is he's always been an instinctive pass defender, but this year he's getting into those lanes and actually making plays. He's got an interception. He had nearly had an interception the other day. He's broken up several passes. And if you're a linebacker, you don't have to be able to chase a running back all over the field. Just get into the passing lanes, affect the quarterback, and he's done a good job with that. So he's brought real energy to the defense. He's a downhill player. He's got some tackles for loss. When he's able to shoot gaps and get in the backfield, he's disruptive. He's a good player. You just don't want him as your best linebacker. That's kind of the problem the Eagles are at right now, where you can argue he's their best linebacker. He's not that guy that you want to build around. He's the guy that you want good players around him. And then with him, with his limitations, that's not a big deal. When you put him beside Alex Singleton right now, he was a lot of fun last year, but he's just really struggling this year.
All right, Tommy, know that you like putting your scouting opinions out there with your scoutsnotebook.com site, and you're giving us some good scouting here. I need you to do it for another Eagle defender. The last game, Eagles against the Jets, Rodney McLeod played less snaps percentage-wise than he ever has as a Philadelphia Eagle, which is 5+ years at this stage. There was no report after the game that was injury related. It was just the fact that the Eagles coaching staff thought that Harris and Marcus Epps were more suited to make big stops in that Jet game. Rodney McLeod hasn't sat on the bench near as much as he did this past week against the Jets. Is it that obvious? From a scout's eye view, is he not as quick as he used to be? Is he not getting to the ball? Is he not finishing tackles? What are you seeing out of Rodney McLeod that says, yeah, age is finally catching up with the Eagle safety?
Yeah, he's not the guy he was. I mean, he tore his ACL last December, right? So, he's able to play this year, but when you're his age and you're coming off an ACL tear, that stuff catches up to you. It's going to have a cumulative effect, and he's had some injuries over his career. The guy that he is now is just not the guy that he was when the Eagles won a Super Bowl, and that guy could make plays all over the field. And you trust your eyes. Simply, he doesn't make plays. He's an effort player right now. In my mind, he would be ideal to be a box safety for a team that liked to go and have an eighth man around the line of scrimmage a lot. I don't think this is a guy that you want back because he doesn't cover as much ground as he used to. And the other thing is he's not as much of a playmaker when he's back away from the football. He's got to attack downhill when the play does come his way. And there was a play, I guess, right down by the goal line. I can't remember if it was maybe the second touchdown, maybe the first or second touchdown. He had a chance to hit somebody by the goal line and keep them out of the end zone and wasn't able to do it. And he's always been a little undersized at 5'9", 5'10", 190, 195 pounds. But he used to be able to hit hard enough and bring enough power that he could make those plays, and now you're just not seeing that guy. So it's unfortunate. He's been a terrific player for the Eagles for quite a while. He's a great off the field, a good leader, it's everything you'd want. But age, Father Time's undefeated, and it looks like Father Time is getting the best of Rodney McLeod.
Yeah, still can't get Tom Brady, though. Father Time.
Eventually, it just may be in his 60s.
Yeah, it's going to be the MVP at 44, which is amazing. But all right, I want to talk about Darius Slay because, interesting. We talked about early season, not enough press coverage, things improving. But Darius, man, he's been great throughout this season. He's been one of the best cornerbacks in football. I would argue, Tommy, he has been the best football player on the Philadelphia Eagles in the 2021 season. Am I right? And when is the last time you saw a corner like this in Philadelphia?
He's been the best defensive player this year. I would agree with that. Offensively or overall, I don't know. Boy, you'd have to think about him and Jason Kelsey might be the two top guys, or Lane Johnson, although Lane did obviously miss that time. But yeah, he's right up there. And this year he has been outstanding because he's been able to cover people. He's also been a playmaker, and that's what you want when you're a top shelf corner. Not only are you able to shut people down, but you're able to make some plays. And we've seen that with the interceptions, the fumble returns, scoring multiple touchdowns. So he's finally lived up to that name of Big Play Slay. And in terms of the last time we had an Eagles corner playing at this level, you might be going back to Asante Samuel in 2008. It's been a while, because they have just, back in the old days when we had Eric Allen, Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor, Al Harris, we were kind of spoiled. Then you went into Lido and Sheldon, and things have just not been great the last decade. So he doesn't have a lot of competition, but Darius is playing at a high level.
I want to ask you about a philosophical question with the Eagles, and understood you've been watching the Eagles and root for the Eagles since the Buddy Ryan days straight up till today. So there have been a lot of different power bases and guys in charge and those making the decisions. And there are just some things that seem to stay with the Eagles, no matter who's owning them, general managing, coaching them, or whatever. They do put a big emphasis on playmaking linebackers. And the other one that kind of bugs me is they're not really a team that puts an extra value on a guy who makes plays just catching the football. The possession wide receiver. That's never been a staple of the Philadelphia Eagles, and it sure as hell isn't this year. They continue to trot Jalen Reagor out there. Why? Because they used the first-round draft pick on him. Why? Because he was a superior athlete, but he doesn't catch the football. That's a problem with wide receiver. We saw what Cooper Kupp did last night. Again, he's the best receiver in the National Football League this year by far. He was a third-round pick. Why? Because he wasn't all that athletic coming out of college. He set the all-time record for most receptions on the lower level. But, yeah, we'll let him go to the third round because he doesn't run fast, doesn't jump high. Are the Eagles ever going to break down and say, can we just get ourselves a catch machine? A guy who all he does is catch the ball. All right, he's not going to get behind the defense. He's not going to have 40-yard touchdowns. But a guy who's just going to make the play and move the chains. Are the Eagles ever going to get themselves one of those type players?
Yeah, that's a great question. It would be interesting to see. I mean, they had Jason Avant, 10 years ago, and Avant was a guy that was a slot receiver, great hands, great route runner, but he wasn't a volume receiver, because they had Macklin and Deshaun Jackson. Avant was a guy that could catch 40 to 50 passes and just move the chains when necessary. The other guys were the players you fed the football to. The Eagles have not had a guy who was a slot receiver, route runner, great hands, volume receiver type. They never have that I can think of. And it'll be interesting to see if they ever pursue that. When you look at the receivers that Sirianni was involved with in San Diego and Indianapolis, there's not really somebody like that in his history that I'm aware of. So I would say if that's what you're looking for, probably not going to happen. But Sirianni was involved with some good receiving groups. And one of the things that he did at both stops was they had a variety of receivers. So it wasn't built around one superstar. They've tried to have 5 guys that could all contribute. And right now, that's one of the problems they have is the role players, Greg Ward, Arthega-Whiteside, they're not really doing much in the way of contributing. They each have 2 catches on the year. You don't want your number 4 and 5 receivers to have 2 catches each. That's not good. Now, the Eagles do have a run offense, but still, Ward's had some costly drops, and Arthega-Whiteside just doesn't give us much. So there's a definite need for the receiving group to be worked on. They've got to have some upgrades, and I don't know if Rager's going to be part of that or not. He's been a massive disappointment. There's no 2 ways about that.
Tommy, I went defense heavy with you, so I buried the lead. I got to get everybody's thought process on the quarterback situation in Philadelphia, obviously, and I want it from 2 perspectives. I want your thoughts on Jalen Hurts in the short term this year, his improvement, what you've seen from him. In the long-term perspective, more of the Howie Roseman outlook, do the Eagles want to play this style of offense long-term? Would they accept this type of offense? Would they build around this type of player long-term? So both the micro and sort of the macro view of Jalen Hurts and where the Eagles are with Jalen Hurts.
With Hurts, if you go back to October, he had not shown much progress at all from his rookie year. And it gets a little tiring to hear the coaches talk about, well, he hasn't made 16 starts, so it's like he's still in his rookie year. No, that's garbage. When you play, when you're in the NFL for a year, you experience a lot of things, whether you're on the field or not. He's in his second season. He has to be judged as a second season quarterback, and he didn't show progress from last December to this October. It was minimal progress. And that made it really frustrating because you're like, this guy, something's not clicking. And then all of a sudden in the Lions game, he started doing some different things. And since then, we've seen real progress every week where there was a point in October where he led the NFL in throws out of bounds. So we all knew, get pressure on him. He's going to scramble to his right. If he doesn't find somebody, he's going to throw the ball 5 rows deep. That's just not something you can sustain over the long term. You want to be able to throw the ball away, but when you're leading the league in throwaways and you're not a volume passer throwing 40 passes a game, that's not a good sign. That's a guy who's giving up on plays and just bailing. And so now you're seeing him really work to stay in the pocket. He's not just bailing at the first sign of pressure. He's not feeling phantom pressure as much. He's legitimately trying to wait in there, and you're seeing progress from him. Is it enough progress? Well, that's really the tricky question. The Giants game, boy, I tell you what, that was a major step back. Let's just hope that was an anomaly because we hadn't seen that version of Jalen Hurts at all this year. So I tend to think that was just him having a bad game. I think he's shown enough that you wanted to look into keeping him around for at least another year, unless you have a chance to definitively upgrade the position. And so if you sit there and you say, we absolutely believe in Russell Wilson, or it sounded like Rodgers might be staying in Green Bay, and obviously we don't know what's going to go on with Deshaun Watson. So unless you have a chance to definitively upgrade him, don't make a change for the sake of making a change. And I think he's shown you enough. You say, all right, maybe we could keep this guy. When you talk about his style, that is something that is not sustainable long-term. Jeffrey Lurie and the Eagles are an analytics-driven organization. They know that throwing the ball is key. Now, that's not to say you can't run for a year or even two to develop the overall offense, to develop your skills, and grow from that. If you go back to the year 2000, Donovan McNabb's second season, the Eagles' passing offense was not a pretty thing. They just didn't have good receivers. You know, you were looking at Torrance Small and Charles Johnson as your key targets. Those, they don't put the fear in anybody's heart. And Donovan was not a great passer. And so he would run around and make plays. I think he finished second in NFL in MVP voting that year because he just made plays, and it was enough. They fed the ball to whoever they had at running back. Deuce got injured that year, so they had a variety of guys they tried to create an offense with. They'd mix in Brian Mitchell, various things, and the offense was good enough to help the Eagles win games, but it wasn't a good offense. The next year, all of a sudden, they bring in some different receivers. They show a little bit of progress. They get a little bit better. They're learning the West Coast offense. By 2002, they had a legitimate passing offense that could throw the ball at anybody. And then by 2004, obviously, Donovan and the Eagles were a flat-out passing team. So the team that you saw in 2000 got a little bit better and went from running the football to passing a little bit more than being good at passing. So there was a real, a development there. And I think that same type thing could happen with Jalen Hurts. Now, Donovan was a more skilled passer than Jalen coming out of college, but you can still look at Jalen and see the potential is there. He just doesn't have anything special about him. I don't know if you guys saw the throw that Justin Herbert had the other day.
Oh, yeah.
That was just you watch that and you say, Jalen Hurts will never do that. He would need a hurricane and a lightning bolt to pull that off.
Right.
And,
but
Jalen
Hurts isn't going to do that, but nor is about 30 out of the other 30 quarterbacks.
Very few.
So I'm not going to hold that against Jalen all that much.
No, I don't mean it against Jalen specifically, but the point is, every team in theory would love to have a quarterback that's physically special like that. That's what you want, is a quarterback that's physically special. And Jalen's not physically special. He's normal, right? He's a good runner, and he's got to develop his passing skills. Can he develop those passing skills to a level where he can move the ball in a good defense in a crucial game or in the playoffs? And I don't know right now that I see a guy that's going to be winning a Super Bowl in the future. But again, we're in year 2 of his development. And in year 2 of Donovan's development, I don't know that I saw him as a guy that was going to be winning Super Bowls. He never did, but he got the Eagles to a Super Bowl. But that, you're looking for signs, and we have seen development from Hurts in the last 6 weeks. We have seen progress. So if you get him some better receivers, get him some more experience, then I think this is a guy who could continue to trend in the right direction. I just don't know. If I'm looking at him right now and you say, am I betting my mortgage on a guy? No, I'm not. But am I sitting there saying there's definitely a better player in the draft? I don't know. There's none of the kids in the draft that I love. And obviously, as we talk about the guys in the NFL, Russell Wilson, watch a Seahawks game. He takes a beating every week. Yeah. That guy is in his mid-30s. And I mean, Russell Wilson has driven me crazy for a decade now. So I usually don't have any sympathy. I feel legitimately bad for him because the man has taken a pounding. Watson, I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And then, Rodgers, it sounds like he's going to be leaving Green Bay. So who are you going to find in the NFL that's going to upgrade over Jalen Hurts?
It is to be determined. All right, Tommy,
exactly.
For those who didn't pick up on it, that was the Todd Pinkston dance I did there for the reference. So he took us back to the early 2000s. All right, let's get you on record. 4 games to go. If the Eagles win all 4, they're basically a lock to make the playoffs. If they win 3 out of 4, they're in pretty good shape. If they win 2 out of 4, it'll fall to the tie-breaking gods, which you never like to be in that situation going into the last week of the season. We've seen what we've seen to this point. Eagles' last 4 games are going to be good enough to make the playoffs?
I'm predicting they go 3-1, finish the season in 9-8. And, playoffs are that, so many things go into that. I'll go ahead and predict yes, because it feels like one of those weird years. And, now here's the thing. You can question for the long-term health of the organization if that's actually what you want. Would you maybe not rather go 7-10, get a little bit better draft pick, and, get ready for the future? Because this team isn't winning a Super Bowl unless there's a bunch of plane accidents. I mean, this group isn't good enough to go beat the best teams right now.
You just got to get the right COVID positive on the right week, Tommy.
There you go. But there is value in playing in important games. And I believe that being in a playoff game or at least competing for playoff spots can have value down the road. I don't think the group in 2017 wins the Super Bowl if they don't play in that playoff game in 2013. They played the Saints, and you had Foles was in that game, Kelsey, Cox, Graham, on down the line. A bunch of key players from the Super Bowl were in that wild card game in 2013, and they felt the pressure, what the playoffs are like. And I think that even 4 years later had value and helped them in that Super Bowl run. So if this team can get into the playoffs, they're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, but if they can experience what playoff football is like, where every play you might move closer to the end of your season, and there's a true pressure that you just don't know from the regular season. There's value in that down the road. So I'd love to see him get in, even knowing that it's going to be a short ride. But hey, let's get in. Let's see what happens.
Tommy, for those who enjoyed your contribution with us here today, I being one of them, they got to hear your opinions. If they want to see your opinions, read your opinions, tell everybody where they can get them these days.
Yeah, so go to eaglesblitz.com. That's where I try to write on a regular basis about the Eagles and the hopeful playoff attack here the last month. And then once we get to the offseason, we're talking about free agency and the draft. And I'm on Twitter at Lawlor NFL. So come check out the stuff, and hopefully occasionally there'll be something interesting or entertaining for you.
Tommy, good stuff. We'll get you back on before the season ends, hopefully for an Eagle playoff run. Thanks for hopping on with us today. We'll talk to you down the road.
My pleasure, guys.
Tommy Lawlor, a North Carolinian who just fell in love with the Philadelphia Eagles when Buddy Ryan was the head coach, has been following him a long time, decided he was going to make a stand and try and get a gig here. He wrote for PhiladelphiaEagles.com for a period of time, and it's had an Eagles
like
website.
Our buddy Les Bowen, a North Carolinian. North Carolinian, sorry.
How do you think I got Tommy's number?
Well, there we go.
It was through Les. So Les got me his number so I could reach out, and I figured we'd punch him up because, I've been checking out his works on eaglesblitz.com and have been pretty impressed with it. I said, let's see if we can get this guy up on a show. Glad we did. I thought he was real good with us today. Appreciate your tuning in to Birds 365. If you are enjoying it, you enjoyed Tommy, you enjoyed Johnny Mac, you put up with me, well, then the least you can do is like us, right? Hit that like button. Feel free to share the show. Feel free to subscribe. If you're not a subscriber yet, we love all our subscribers. Do so here on Birds 365. All right, Mac and Mac coming back. We'll tell you who the guest is. Another opinionated fellow for hour number 2 here on Birds 365.